Okay, welcome our next guest, Art Harman. He is the director of the Colonization to Save Man Space Exploration, was a legislative director and space advisor for the Congress Stockman, who represented the Johnson Space Center in Houston. He wrote space policy for the Trump campaign. He met frequently with NASA, commercial space companies, and space advocates to advance a more bold space program, and has worked in the public policy arena during his career in the nation's capital. Served on the board of directors of 3 nonprofits and is a television producer and photographer. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Well, I'm glad to be here with you all. And many of you heard last night the big debate on LOP-G, the Lunar Orbiting Platform Gateway. Gotta love those NASA acronyms. And so I'm just going to fill in a little bit more about it. First off, yesterday, Vice President Pence reiterated his support for the Gateway and promised that it would be crewed by the end of 2024, and that the president will ask for an extra $500 million to get it started. And so if we're going to do it, that's better than doing it even slower. But I'm hoping that with a little bit of time and effort and people like everyone in the room, that we can convince them to put boots on the ground rather than orbiting up in the air where no air, where we can only watch others landing on the moon. The Vice President also shared a quote from the movie Interstellar, which you all might want to use in arguing against those who see no value in going to space, who think it's a waste of time and money and so forth. So it's just kind of a cool quote. We used to look up at the sky and wonder at our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt. And so the Vice President said, that's not how Americans think. And that's the way people in Europe and a lot of other people think too, that, hey, our future's up there. And the more we do up there, the more prosperity and so forth we'll have down here. So then that gets to the Lunar Orbiting Gateway. Now, this would, as you know, most of you in the room saw the debate or read on the issue. This is a mini ISS. They would have several modules. They've been getting some more promises of modules from various ISS partners, and it will just go around and around the moon every orbit, and we'll get to look down at it. They may give the people on it a little Nintendo controller that they can then control robots on the surface to kind of prove that there's a value to having it. But that could be done from a control room at SpaceX or Astrobotics or JPL just as easily. The lag is very short. And as someone said the other day, we have cars driving themselves around in New York City, so we could certainly have a robot lander on the moon driving itself around the moon. And in fact, our Mars rovers have limited sort of self-driving and collision avoidance, because when it's 15 minutes or so to the moon, to Mars lag, then you've got, and you're telling it to go forwards. Well, everything you see is way beyond where it is, way behind. So it's got to sense, oh, there's a crater there. I'm going to go around that. So anyway, LOP-G, whatever its name may be, and God, I hope NASA will let some high school students pick a real name for it. Whatever it is, just pick a name, please. LOP-G doesn't do it. But it's not getting much love from space advocates. It's not even getting a lot of love from Congress, the people who are funding it. I had the honor to work in Congress for a member who was representing the Johnson Space Center. So I was in the heart of it all. The space committees, the industry, and so forth. And in fact, you know, it seems like this is a new idea, but it's not. Because in 2014, I had industry representatives coming around shopping this proposal to me, and because they knew the past administration wanted nothing at all to do with the moon. And they're done that, was the official word. And so they were kind of coming up with something to do, you know, in the intervening, in the future decades that needs to be started now. And so they came up with the idea when the moon was a 4-letter word in NASA. Literally. I had people that were afraid to say the word. And there was somebody who was having a press conference at NASA. I was there, I saw it. And so he's got some backdrops showing in, you know, various things of his industry, including something that had a picture of something on the moon. And somebody came out and said, "Take that down or this press conference is over." So the moon was verboten, and industry kind of said, "Oh, all right, well, we'll give you something else." So my point is, that's old. We now have an administration that is committed more to the moon than ever before. Jim Bridenstine, the new NASA administrator, he gets it on the moon in many ways. He's the guy who said that when we discovered water ice on the moon, we should have changed everything and gone immediately to the South Polar craters. Oh, there's my little thing. That was kind of indicative of the previous administration. It's like, don't touch the moon. And if we don't, others will. And as Sir Edmund Hillary said, no one remembers who climbed Mount Everest the second time. So we should be there. And that's where all the action is going to be in the 2020s. That's where we're going to learn how to live on Mars. LOP-G is, Dr. Zubrin rightly calls it a toll booth, because you've got to use that to get to the moon. And so if your plan had been, oh, I'm going to send a little mining robot to the moon, well, you're going to kind of be urged to pay the piper and take it via the gateway before it goes to Mars, to the moon. But what's behind the European Space Agency, ESA? They're proposing a moon village. There's one artist rendition. However, there's somebody that's very, very interested in it, and that's China. And China is essentially working to take that over, because the ESA is not going to be investing a huge amount of money in it. But here's where it'll be. It's going to be on the south pole of the moon. And you can see the blue areas are the areas that have been identified as potentially water signatures. And then we even crashed, what was it, Clementine or something on the moon? Some of you guys will know that better than me. And it sent up a plume that had traces of water that we could detect. So that's where we're going to be. But it's an awful small area. So we don't want to just, abandon it and not go there. We don't want to let the nation that says the South China Sea and 400 years of freedom of the seas is over, and they'll just simply say, like they do every day in the South China Sea, this is ours, get out. They could do that on the moon, and they don't care about things like the Outer Space Treaty, just as they don't care about the Law of the Sea Treaty that they're violating every day in the South China Sea. So the water, the craters on the moon are where we're going to be living, where mankind will be there. And there's a lot of reasons to be on the moon rather than going directly to Mars. One is we have no idea about the physiology of humans in low gravity. Okay, we got 2 data points. We got Earth gravity and we've got microgravity. And you all can draw a line and say, okay, on the moon it's going to, you know, everything in your body's going to happen at exactly that % rate. But what if it's not? 2 data points, life and death. Well, there's a lot of stuff that happens in between. And so turn on your computer and turn off your computer. And there's hopefully a lot that goes on in between. Those are the kinds of lessons we're going to learn. So there is time for this administration to think differently on LOP-G. They may not abandon it. I'd be happy if they just simply say, concurrent with LOP-G, we're going to build a lander, call up SpaceX, call up one of a dozen commercial companies, and say, beautiful X Prize if you deliver us a lunar lander. And, you know, here it is, you know, $4 billion, you know, somebody will scramble for that. And then we'll have a lander. And then I don't really care what they do with LOP-G. It can be useful. But it shouldn't delay us on the moon from ever landing until the late 2020s. The Vice President had a speech yesterday. You can look it up in Houston at Johnson Space Center. And he reaffirmed, as I said, commitment to LOP-G and advancing it. And he said it will be crewed by 2024, the end of 2024. And so that's the timetable. They want to take small rovers, and they've got a program that will buy services, simple contracts, for small and medium-sized landers. Think small lunar landers, Astrobotics, and some of the other contestants in the Google Lunar X Prize. For medium ones, those are supposed to be 1,100 pounds and up. So you can pack more stuff. That I guess is kind of curiosity size. So let's have boots on the poles. And then how can we best use the 2020s to prepare for Mars? Well, one thing is, as I said, X Prizes to get more entrepreneurial activities, commercial landers. Now, NASA won't necessarily put those landers on the South Pole, which is the only place that really matters. Tranquility Base was perfect for Apollo 11 to land, but nobody's going to be living there because everything is on the South Pole. So you're going to see that's where we need to have the rovers. Send them down, have them scoop up stuff, look for water ice, learn how to process that into drinkable water, hydrogen, oxygen, and so forth. And so set up a demonstration water processing system, and then, of course, build human landers to the South Pole craters, and then a research base that really will be the core of a colony on the moon. Again, this is the only place you're really going to ever want to live, because that's where the ice is. And you can have your colony perched so it's got Earth view and thus communications, build your condos with a gorgeous view of Earthrise, and so forth. But this is where it's happening. So then we get to the takeover of ESA's Moon Village. And so last month, ESA and the Chinese military-led space program had a little confab in which they laid out some of their plans. And I got the slides. And so the people in the leaders of the Chinese lunar space exploration program in CNSA, they say NASA will focus on building the LOP-G. CNSA will build the Lunar Scientific Research Station on the surface. And then sort of the low blow, LOP-G has low economic effectiveness, which meshes beautifully what Dr. Zubrin was saying last night, sadly so. Here's another one of their slides, and the humorous thing is that the head of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Agency is using US slides that he's modified. They copy everything, they really do. Their Long March 9 rocket, look at it and then go look at SLS. Same thing. You look at our F-35 and F-22s, and then you look at their J whatever is 21 or something, and it's almost the same. You look at the list just goes on and on. And so this is what they are looking at. And as I said, we cannot take lightly what they're doing in the South China Sea, what they will be doing in the East China Sea and the Yellow Sea and the Indian Ocean. Look up first island chain, that's sort of like Japan, Taiwan, and so forth. Look up second island chain, third island chain. Some of what they call their third island chains includes Hawaii and reaches into the Indian Ocean. And that's why so many countries in Asia and India, too, are sort of, becoming even greater allies of the U.S., Vietnam and so forth, because they see that threat. When China puts down $1 billion oil rig in their territorial waters and says, if you blow this up because it's in your territorial waters, we're going to war with you, then it'll be the same thing there. So let's rewind a little bit back. Several years ago, I think it was in late 13, early 14, I was at a small briefing by the NASA administrator, Charles Bolden. And he said, get through this stuff, "We will never lead a mission to the moon in my lifetime." That's about the tone of voice he's talking. "In spite of our ISS partners begging us to do so." What the heck? And again, this was the past administration. It's over. But so ESA, European Space Agency, was begging Bolden to go to the moon. They said, "We're with you. Our next step, we want to be on the moon." And that sort of evolved independently into their moon village. And so because Bolden refused, then they partner with China, who's delighted to basically get a military base on the south pole of the moon, where the water is, with an ESA branding, so it doesn't seem quite so threatening. It's like a lot of products in the U.S., you may not know that they were made in a Chinese slave labor camp because they have some, brand name on them. And you look at the brand name, whether it's an American brand name, usually those are made in more reputable factories. The stuff you buy at dollar stores are not. But it won't say made in slave labor by slaves. It'll just say, kid's toy. We promise it doesn't contain too much lead and mercury and arsenic. So it's time to reboot all this and just simply say, we're going back to the moon, throw out this old program that, as I said, in 14, it was being shopped around by the big space contractors because of that statement and others like it that he made more publicly. So it's like, okay, end of not going to the moon, going everywhere but, and the start of hopefully going going on beyond. So moon ahead and so forth. From yesterday's debate, and you'll recognize some of those guys, why are there so few defenders? I was actually invited by Dr. Zubrin to be on that debate if they had more people defending it, because I was going to oppose it. And Dr. Zubrin said, well, I want you on my side of the debate. He called like 50 people in Washington, here in the space industry on this coast and so forth, and couldn't find anyone else who would defend it. And even in Congress, what I find is that they are unable to articulate a clear reason not to go to the surface first. And there'll be the explanations that the administration makes, NASA makes, our able defender in favor of LOP-G made last night. But when you get down to it, what's going to excite kids? The generation of kids that we want beating down the doors to the STEM departments and saying, I want to be on the moon. Sort of that you get from being down there, boots on the ground. You don't get it from ISS too much. Every time something either goes really right or really wrong on ISS, it makes the evening news. If it bleeds, it leads. And so, but other than that, it's pretty boring. They're doing stuff with computers and instruments. The times they actually put on a spacesuit and go outside and you see it on the evening news and you tune to the NASA channel and you see it, that's pretty rare. On the moon, it'll be more frequent that they'll actually be going out and doing stuff. There'll be a lot of stuff to build. And so that's going to captivate people. Just as a teeny example, what happened earlier this year? Well, Elon Musk launched his Falcon Heavy. What was on the Falcon Heavy? Yes. And what did that do? The memes that went around Facebook and the internet and so forth were, it captivated people's imagination. Every kid could imagine, I want to do that. I want to be there with my arm out the window. And it, probably some of those folks got a little spark, and maybe they will be going to STEM departments. Maybe they will say, I want to be part of the space program. I don't care whether I'm coding, whether I'm welding, dragging alligators off the launch pad at dawn, whatever it is, I want to be part of it, which is what we had in the 1960s when there's like 300,000 people working directly and indirectly for the space program. And we can, and many, many more that went towards the space program and then they went into something related. And we had a huge boom in computers and technology as a result. This is what we're going for. It's not boots on the ground. We need the boots on the ground. We need this guy. And how am I doing on time? Timekeeper? 3 minutes. Thank you. Let me wrap up, and then I'll have plenty of time for questions and questions you might not have been able to ask our able debaters last night. But given Apollo scale budgets, build LOP-G, and build a lander, and a bunch of other stuff, and build a moon base. And that's what we should have if we continued Apollo-style budgets. In this era of almost flat budgets, where their Congress and administration are looking, okay, what can we pirate from NASA's budget to pay for this? How can we get an extra $500 million into it? Then we've got to prioritize, triage. What's most important? Boots on the ground that will inspire us, get us, learn to live on Mars, and then go live on Mars. And we don't want the space station, you know, watching China build their lunar base from spectator seating on LOP-G. This is what we want instead. So I appreciate your attention and happy to take questions. You can also reach me at websites, and it's all at Save Man Space. Okay, right there first.
So what would it take to get the administration to skip LOP-G and go straight to the surface?
Bridenstine is a key, because Bridenstine gets it. Now, he's sort of inheriting this. And I truly, but you look back at one of his statements where he said, when we discovered water ice on the poles, we should have dropped everything, changed everything, and gone there. So, and what he said at one point was sort of like, this is the best possible option that we have at this time from what I have heard. It's almost like he's saying,
Give me a better option.
yeah. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can get commercial space to say, I'll build a lander, I'll build some modules. You've got Bigelow out in, not too far from here in Nevada. They would be delighted to put a bunch of his BA-330s on the surface of the moon. I've seen one of his proposals for doing that, and it would be impressive. Okay, yes, next.
The United States is responsible for China's excellent space program. Their founder there, Werner von Braun, was H.S. Chen, right up here. He was the co-founder of Caltech. He was the guy who we sent to Germany at the end of the war to find von Braun. But during the Red Scare, we imprisoned him and then traded him for a spy. And he went back to China, and they imprisoned him. And then finally they let him out, and he said, look, I just want to build rockets. And he lived to see Yang Liwei, the first Chinese astronaut, go into space. Why do we keep making those same mistakes? Lao Tzu, Art of War, would say, or Machiavelli, if you want to hear from the source, embrace them. Let's make them a full partner in our lunar base. Let's bring them on, and we both have keys to the base. They're not going to take over the South Pole because we are working with them. Is there any way we could make that possible?
Well, there's some logic in that. However, China, being what it is, a militarily aggressive dictatorship, plunders everything they get their hands on. So if they're partners with us, and this is why Congressman Wolf wrote into law some years ago a prohibition on cooperation with China, because what they do is they plunder any technology they get, and just like their stealth fighter looks like our stealth fighter that it was stolen from, their Long March 9 looks like our SLS, they would use that technology, because it's all dual use basically, for military and other purposes. And it would erode, because they've got something that they don't like to talk about too much, which is Made in China 2025. And that's sort of their cutoff date of sort of like, okay, American companies, we no longer need you. You know, we're going to start booting you guys, and it's all going to be Chinese companies making everything for the world, and you guys are just going to have to live with it. So there is strategic reasons that we should not be partners with them. It's a pity that we end up then being adversaries, but we would be treated as adversaries even if the smile is there. You know, it's sort of like a grinning lion. It still has an intention to eat you, even if it comes up and is purring at your leg. You should not trust it, and there's just, you know, yes?
Doesn't a long-bust BFR relatively inexpensive and carrying hundreds of tons of gear? Doesn't that solve a big problem for the moon landing?
Well, it certainly would. He's got to go from drawing board and computer to bending sheet metal and composites. And something I'm going to talk about, because my very next thing right here is President Trump's space policy. And I've got something interesting on that you might like to hear. Go ahead, and I'll get to you.
If you drop LOP-G, you have a commercial space program similar to what Boeing and SpaceX are doing to put a lander on the moon, how much additional budget would you need for NASA to really
Well,
advantage of the lunar resource?
well, everything is going to be put into LOP-G.
No, I'm saying drop.
Oh, yeah.
Take that cost.
Yeah.
Say you have that cost, then you initiate a commercial program
Mhm.
to what we did with SpaceX. But now you still have to be down on the moon, and you have to have resources and bases and all the infrastructure for that.
Sure.
So what do you think the delta in the budget would be,
Prob-
presuming you use part of LOP-G's budget?
Probably not very much more. You're still going to have to go from the Earth to the moon, to lunar orbit or the lunar surface and deliver stuff. You're still going to be doing sending out habitats. You can build a lander. You know, it doesn't have to be the gold-plated lander. You can have different species of them according to the needs. You know, a cargo lander that's not man-rated and anything like that, a personnel lander and stuff like that. And they don't have to cost, you know, $50 billion and take 20 years to make. Yeah, you know, SpaceX, all you other guys, bring your contracts, pound on Bridenstine's door and say, hey, give me a few bucks, I'll land. And it probably wouldn't cost much more. But we would get so much more out of it. You had a question?
I've seen all the diagrams that showed how the Gateway Station was supposed to be used during the Obama era, how Gateway Station would be used to eventually get NASA to Mars decades from now, building the transfer vehicle, doing orbital missions to Mars, all that. I've not seen any information about what the role of the Gateway Station would be going to the moon with. So is it literally just left over from the Obama era? Is it just...
What were they going to do with it?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to run some rovers with the Nintendo controllers up there to get rid of that 2-second pesky lag so that they can say they're doing something. They'll have people go out there, and then the idea is some of those rovers that are down there, they'll bring up lunar samples to LOP-G, where then they will be taken out of that and then put into another spacecraft that takes it back to Earth. It's sort of make work.
It sounds like it's still just left over from the old architecture's still there, and it's just still there. They haven't removed it.
They really need to do a rethink. I love NASA dearly. I think the bureaucracy in NASA, if you get back to sort of a 1960s, we're going to the moon. You know, so something that I have on my website, savemanspace.com, is a sign you can just print out. It simply says, the moon. And it's a replica of the signs that were pasted up all over NASA during the 1960s, during the Apollo program. Sort of like, you come in the morning, grab your cup of coffee. Hey, Charlie, what are we doing today? Oh, going to the moon. Oh, my God, let me get busy. You know, it was a mission. It was a purpose. And if we get back to a real purpose, then we'll do better.